Once my IUL policy is in force, how often should I meet with my IUL specialist? In this episode, I'm going to address this question, but the short answer is absolutely no less than once a year in an annual review. To do what? To diversify, change the allocation, and rebalance. You wouldn't believe how many IUL agents do not understand how to do those two things in an annual review. Unfortunately, sometimes it's like slam, bam, thank you, ma'am. The IUL agent sells you the policy and you never see him again for years or maybe never, okay? Use an agent that is dedicated to the business that's going to be there, okay? So get ready. I'm going to show you what diversification and rebalancing means and why that will tweak your rate of return from 8% up to over 11%. It's worth it to have annual reviews. So I'm Doug Andrew. I've been helping thousands of Americans now for 5 decades optimize their assets, minimize taxes, and empower their authentic wealth. My favorite financial instrument, without question, if you watch very many episodes on this channel, is a property structured max funded IUL, okay? Now, if it's property structured and max funded, and then if you rebalance and diversify every year, it will be a superior capital accumulation tool that will knock the socks off of the same amount of money invested in IRAs or 401ks in the market. Unfortunately, many IUL agents do not know how to diversify and rebalance. So get ready. I'm going to share this with you, and I think you're going to be blown away here. So first of all, I came up with an A2 factor years ago. It means A number one, I believe that every financial advisor should be accountable to their clients by at least answering 3 questions once a year. Question number 1. What have we done to provide value for you and your family during the last year? Number 2, what do we intend to do to provide value for you and your family during the next year? And 3, what makes us unique? And why should you continue to do business with us versus any other advisor out there, okay? So I think I should be accountable by answering those 3 questions for my clients. Now, likewise, it's a two-way street. A2 is, I think that every client, you should be looking out for your own best interest. The best fiduciary for you is you. I think the client should answer at least 3 questions also once a year in an annual review. Question number 1, are you on track to fund your IUL as planned? If not, we've got to adjust this, okay? So number 2, are there any adjustments that need to be made? If you're not going to fund it like we thought, we've got to lower the death benefit or change your expectations or whatever. Or if you think you're going to be able to catch up for it in a couple of years or whatever, and you want to be grandfathered. But if we need to make adjustments, we do that so that we can make sure it performs at its optimal potential, regardless of how life happens, okay? If you end up with less money, more money away. If you end up with more money, that's a nice problem. We open new IUL policies, which happens 95% of the time. 5% of the time, people have to make their IUL bucket smaller because you know what the number one reason is? Their kids borrowed money, or they were billing out their kids from business or divorces or whatever, and the kids said they would pay it back and they didn't. And so the parents lost the money they were going to put into their IUL. Sad, but true. So we sometimes have to make adjustments, which IUL is very flexible to do that. The third is, well, what has changed with your health, your income, your family? Do you have more children, whatever? Your assets that needs to be incorporated into your overall flexible plan so that we continue to optimize your assets and minimize taxes, okay? Those 3 questions, and that allows me to keep their plan tweaked. And then I can diversify and rebalance. Does that make sense? So remember the objectives of property structure max funded IUL. It knocks the socks off of other alternatives because the three biggest dangers that cause most retirees to outlive their money: taxes, inflation, market volatility. IUL eliminates those dangers. It makes people immune from those. How? Because you're converting to IUL, which is totally tax-free. It doesn't matter what taxes go up to. It doesn't affect you. When you understand linking your returns to the things that inflate, I don't like inflation any more than anybody. It doesn't hurt me. It helps me. If inflation goes to 10, I earn 15. If inflation goes to 15, I earn 20. You will understand this by watching other episodes on this channel. And by using indexing, I'm able to participate if the market goes up. But if the market crashes, I don't lose one dime due to the market downturn, okay? That's the beauty of indexing. So what are the three greatest benefits of IUL? Liquidity, the ability to access your money when you need it for any emergency. Number two, safety of not only the institution, but safety of your principal. If I set aside money, I don't want to lose that money that I've set aside due to a market downturn. And any year that I make money, I want that to become newly protected principal. Any money I make in previous years, I don't want to lose in future years due to market downturns. Most advisors have no clue how to do that one. IUL does that. And then, of course, to earn a predictable rate of return, not pie in the sky rates of return. There are some years, with what I'm going to show you next, where you will earn 25%, 61%, 158%, not year in and year out. But with those good years, it offsets the years where you don't make anything, but you don't lose. Zero is your hero. But your average return will be 11 to 14%. Yeah, you can earn 11 and net 10. And I would have to earn 15% in a tax-deferred IRA or 401k in the market after tax to net 10. To earn 15 in the market is scary. I only have to earn 11 to net 10 in an IUL, and that's very predictable, and I've done it for years. So the way I like to illustrate this is by using the worst period since the Great Depression. It's called the Great Recession. It started actually in November of 1999. I'm going to go 12 years to November of 2012. This graph shows the S&P 500, people who had money in the market, usually in IRAs or 401ks. If they had $1 million nest egg at the beginning of that Great Recession, without adding a dime, that $1 million nest egg would have dropped down to $600,000 from 2001 to 2003 due to the 9/11 terrorist attacks and what have you. They felt like they had lost their future. They had to put off retirement 7 years because it took 4 years to make back what they lost. 7 years, okay? And so in 2007, they finally had their $1 million back to $1 million again. Now, IUL, during that downturn, our clients did not lose a dime. They may not have made anything in 2001. If they didn't come in for annual reviews, they maybe didn't make anything in 2002 and 2003, but they didn't lose. But as soon as the market turned around, they started making money. But because they came in for annual reviews, we said, hey, it looks like the market's going to keep going down here for a while. Just switch over to the general account portfolio rate, which at the time was 5%. So instead of earning 0 in 2002 and 2003, they earned 5, tax-free. That's the value of an annual review. So they only earned 0 one of those years. The other years when it was up, they capped out and earned 16%, 17 actually in this time. What happened in 2008? As Warren Buffett put it, he said, when the tide went out in 2008, it revealed who was swimming naked, is what he said. Yeah, people, they were finally back to $1 million, and that $1 million went down to $600,000 again for the second time in a decade. It took 4 years until 2012 before that $1 million was above water to $1,046,000. And that measly $46,000 didn't even keep up with inflation. In fact, the average annual rate of return during the Great Recession for people who had their money in the market in the S&P was a pathetic 1/3 of 1% compounded rate of return. What's the message? In 2008, when the market went down, our clients were cheering because they didn't lose. In fact, they did that in 2007. The first 90 days of 2009, our clients locked in gains of 16% after not losing a dime. Now, if people set up their IUL and never came in for annual reviews, money in an IUL in that Great Recession, $1 million would have been worth $230,000. It would have had a 130% increase. Okay, compared to money in the S&P was barely worth $1,046,000. This is what IUL does, even without annual reviews. The average return might be, 7-8%. Okay. From 2000 to 2010, it was actually 7.23. When you add on the last 2 years, it tweaked it up to over 8%. That's okay. But I'd rather have 130% instead of 4%. Now, if they came in for annual reviews, I already gave you a simple example. When the market went down here, we told them to switch over and just earn 5. So instead of having 1, 2, 3, 4, instead of having 5 years of zero and 5 years of gain, our clients only had 2 years of zero and 8 years of gain. 3 of those 8 years was 5%. The other 5, they made 16 and 17%, 2 of those years. And instead of having 130%, guess what they had? 250 to 300%. Their $1 million was worth $2.5 to $3 million because they came in for annual reviews. Are you getting it? Now, let me simplify what I mean by diversification and rebalancing. Simply put, if you diversify, instead of having all of your money in an IUL in a 1 year point to point, which I showed you, you would have had a 130% return in that worst decade. If you would have allocated 40% to a 1 year point to point, 40% to a 2 year point to point, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, watch other episodes on this channel, okay? 20% in a 5 year, okay? The actual historical performance back to the Great Depression with that diversification, so simple, your average was over 11%. Duh. That's diversification. What do I mean by rebalancing? Okay. You come in every year and depending upon what's going on in the market, when there's anxiety, that spells opportunity. So during a market downturn, if in an annual review, we're in a recession, you switch maybe from this to this, 50% in a 2 year and 50% in a 5 year, if you're not going to need any of this money probably for at least 5 years or longer down the road. Why? Because if you switch to this at the bottom of a downturn in the market, oh my heavens, your average is over 14% in any 20-year period since the Great Depression. And people say, yeah, Doug, how do you earn 11? How do you earn 14? I just showed you, okay? Let me give you one other example here. When there's anxiety, there's opportunity. So during the COVID-19 pandemic, what was it, March of 2020? The market dropped 30%. My sons contacted 800 of their clients and said, here's an opportunity. It doesn't happen very often. Switch from a cap strategy to a threshold strategy. Now, you can watch other episodes to understand what I'm talking about. Basically, normally in all of those that I just showed you, you make a return up to a cap, okay? And so if you're capped out, you might be capped out at 12% or 15 or 16% or 17%. That's why even though the S&P went up higher than 16 or 17, that's what they got credited. But I'm okay with a cap because I don't lose when the market goes down. And that's why I average, 11 or 14%. But if you switch to a threshold, that means the insurance company lifts the cap. There are no caps. They're going to credit you with whatever the growth of the S&P is, but they're going to subtract maybe 5% off of your rate of return. We don't usually use that because if the average were 12, you subtract 5, you're only going to net 7. So we normally don't do that unless what? Unless there's a major downturn in the market. So March of 2020, the market drops down 30%. My sons contacted 800 of their clients and said, link some or all of your IUL cash value to a 1-year point-to-point with no cap with a threshold of 5%. This client did and allocated half of their money, $18,000 in their policy. They got credited that year because the S&P 1 year later was up 66.33%, March of 2021, okay? They got credited 61%, 66 minus 5, a net of 61%. 18,000 grew to 29,000 tax-free. Wow. Here's a client that allocated 1/4 of his. He had millions in his policy. 852,000 he did in 1 year. March of 2020 to March of 2021, he got credited 61.33%, 850,000 grew to 1,387,000. He made 535 grand in one single year. If the next year the market would have crashed, he would not have lost one dime of the 535. He may not make anything the next year, but he doesn't lose what he made. That's lock in and reset. Now, I'm not even going to show you, but many of our clients did a multiplier, which is explained on this channel, and they made 158% return during that 1 year by multiplying, by giving the insurance company the authority to use a little bit more money out of their policy to buy more upside options. And the insurance company paid, 2.7 times whatever the S&P did. That's what annual reviews can do for a trained professional. This is why we have many, many clients that they end up with an average of 12.88% in the first 13 years of their policy, okay? This client had 110,000. When he took out the policy, we only projected 63,000 by the 13th year, and he was going to be happy with that. Instead, we underpromised and overdelivered. Instead of having 63,000, he had 110. Was he happy? Absolutely. Okay. Why? Because he came in for annual reviews and we rebalance. So we have an organization called IUL Insiders, and we have a very intensive program that certifies IUL agents. It's not an easy exam. It's 100 questions, and 10 of them are actually case design. They have to score not 70%, not 80%, 100% to become certified. Because I'm not going to point anybody to an IUL agent that hasn't proven that they know exactly what they're doing. This was one of our first graduating classes, and since then, we've had many become certified. I would recommend that you engage with a certified IUL professional. You can reach out to us and we can point you to one. If you're an IUL agent and you want to become certified, check into it. Go to IULinsiders.com and you can see what it takes to become certified, but it would be well worth it. You will be blown away with what you learn. So if you want to learn more, of course, I have a dozen books. My most recent, The Laser Fund, 300 pages, charts, graphs, explanations, and 62 actual client stories. You can go to laserfund.com, contribute a nominal amount towards the shipping and handling. I'll cover the rest of that and I'll pay for the book and fire out a hard copy to you. But if you want to learn more, get some more perspectives on what I'm talking about in this episode, I would recommend you watch this particular video here next to gain further insights into opportunities you probably didn't know existed before.